One other thing that I did is I taped a toothpick to this gap between the two header bows directly in the center. And this does wind up to be the center of the windshield. So when the top fabric is laid over, I can feel that little bump and I know that I'm centered. And I also made a China mark with it in that position as well. Additionally, we've got the top fabric pulled down over the corners, down to nearly the bottom of the header bow, and this piping behind the edge of the header bow, and just clamped with some soft jaw squeeze clamps to hold it into place while we do our marking. Switch sides.
Tell me when you're ready.
So how are we on that other side there? Does that look?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
yeah, that's
we're
pretty
even
good.
and we got it stretched. Yeah. All right. Another thing I thought of while we were planning out how to do this was coming up with a way to find out where to put the glue on the inside of the top, because your markings are on the outside and the glue goes on the inside. So we're gonna take a pencil and try to scribe a line on the inside of the fabric along our outside line. We'll stretch it back and then run a pencil up the inside. If it leaves a mark, great. If it doesn't, well, we tried. Or there might be semblances or remains of a mark that we can use. So I'm going to try to stretch this back out to where we were. And this is just for glue, so you may have to go back and forth several times. It doesn't really have to be a solid line. I think I just, an idea of where. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It gives me an idea of where I gotta put glue on. Okay. General area. All right, well, let's see what we get. It looks like our little trick with the pencil has worked. You can see this line right here, and that does roughly correspond with where our pink line is from the China marker. So that's not a cast in stone thing, but at least it gives me a guideline that I need to apply glue up to and maybe even a little over that line. Otherwise, you're kind of flying blind, either by flipping it back and forth or trying to fold it along your marked edge. So I think that's a good trick. I'm going to apply some glue and then let it set up, and then we'll come back to stick the top down. The glue I'm going to use is available at my little corner hardware store. It's Weldwood contact adhesive. It says water resistant when dry, flexible bond, and it has a brush built in the cap. In my conversations with Whitby Motor Cars, they've assured me that this is good stuff to use. I mean, there are commercial available vinyl top adhesives, things like that. They're meant to be used with a spray gun, and your minimum quantity is a gallon, whereas you're going to use the better part of 2 ounces on this job. I would recommend buying a fresh can for this project. I wouldn't rely on something that's been sitting on your shelf for a while. Get a fresh bottle. It's cheap insurance. And the idea with this stuff is that you paint it on both surfaces and you let it dry. I think it's a minimum of 15 minutes, but not more than 2 hours. So we're going to paint some of this stuff on, let it dry, and come back and stick the top. I have some experience with this stuff. I used it for my console repair. I'm not going to go all the way out to the curves. I'm going to deal with those later. But I am going to paint up to my pencil line and a little over it, and at least an inch wide, which is the width of that front of the header bow. And you want a nice even coat. And again, I'm going just a little bit above my pencil line. In the only interest of honesty and transparency, this is actually going to be round 2 of gluing the top fabric to the header bows. The other day, my wife and I worked on it, made our markings, applied the glue, stretched it, stuck the fabric down, but we made what I now realize is a mistake. We started from the center and worked our way out to the corners, and that proved to be wrong. What happened is that with the fabric stuck in the center and out along the windshield frame, we lost all of the capability of being able to stretch the fabric out and around and down the corners of the header bows. There was nothing left. So it was just going to be the raw exposed aluminum. So we're going to try this again. I was able to successfully peel the fabric off with no damage, cleaned up the glue as best as I could, and now we're going to start by working the corners first and then pulling and stretching the center section and getting the wrinkles out. During the stretching, marking, and gluing of the top, you're going to be pulling and pushing and stretching on these header bows a lot, and you can't use the ends as a mean to secure them because you're going to be stretching fabric down, forming these corners. So they have to remain free and clear. So since the top does not glue down to the upper surface of that header bow, I wrap tape over and around and down onto the glass and then sliced it off flush with that break. So now I can do what I need to do. These things are really stuck down. They're not going to pull off. And then I also tape down a toothpick in the center between the gaps of the header bows. And that'll give me a little alignment point that I can feel through the fabric to know that I'm on center. I'm wiping down any place where I'm going to be applying the contact cement. I've got some acetone on this rag. to remove any skin oil, dirt, grease, glue from the previous attempt that I missed. I want to be assured of having as strong a bond as possible. As before, I am applying a thin, even coat of contact adhesive on the areas where the top is going to stick down to. You don't want to glob this stuff on. You don't want to be stingy, but you don't want a thick, heavy glob on here. You want to be able to spread it out nice and thin. I'm not very concerned about getting a little bit onto the chrome windshield frame, because the top will come off away from it and you can clean that up later. But just spread a nice thin coat on the surfaces, spread it out. The directions recommend that it sits for at least 15 minutes or until it dries, glosses over, and is not tacky, but no more than 2 hours before you stick the parts together. I'm going to apply some more adhesive to the top in the areas that we're going to be working on, and then we'll try this again. I've put some paper over the majority of the header bows because I've got everything coated with contact adhesive, and the nice thing about it is it won't stick to the paper because the adhesive is dry. It only sticks when it comes into contact with other surfaces that have adhesive on it. So I'm going to get these corners attached, clamped into position on both sides, and then work my way across, removing paper as I need to and sticking the bulk of the top material to the header bows. I'm going to get this piping just inside the header bow, and I'm going to only stick the side right now, really rub it and try to get it to bond, and then I have a clamp here that I'm going to apply. I'm relying on the cement to hold this into place, and then counting on the clamp to get it to stick. We're over on the passenger side. Get the material up. Get my clamp ready. Really pull and stretch to get that material down to the bottom of the header bow, and it wants to stick, so you have to kind of watch what you're doing. And get that piping just to the inside and have enough material to cover the bottom of that header bow. Get it to stick. I've got glue on this front surface and on the side surface. Piping is just on the edge. Again, I'm going to get a clamp in here. So it doesn't crawl up. Okay. Go check the other side. Now we're going to work our way from this corner to the center, maybe about here, and then we'll switch over to the other side, work that same distance, and we'll flip back and forth, trying to pull this taut and get it tight and get it snug. So I'm going to lift this up. It's funny how tape sticks to everything that you don't want it to stick to, but not what you do. But I am able to pull and stretch. These clamps are proving essential because the bond alone is resisting, or not resisting, pull. I just don't want it to crawl up. Get the paper out, and we start to pull and stick. Putting a lot of pressure on this, try to get it to bond. Alright, you do have a little bit of work time here. It sticks, but you can break the bond. You don't want to do that. You want to do that as little as possible. But you can see where I'm able to pull and stretch. Make sure all the way around that I have got a tight bond now, because I will pull this off the car again, go back and fold the upholstery under and into the channel, and that will really lock it into place. And I will then finesse these corners into shape. Just going to keep working this bond for a little while. Make sure that it's good and stuck. I'm going to lift the top off the car, get it back over to the bench, and work on rolling that fabric inside the channel. So remove my tapes that held the header bows in place. clamp. Okay, it has not moved. Get the bows off of that center support and move the top over to the bench. Okay, we've got the top back on the bench. I am going to lay a coat of adhesive inside the front face of the channel, the part that's down on the table, and then also on the fabric inside, and we'll let that set up and dry as it says on the directions, and we'll come back and do some more upholstery. Well, we've applied a nice thin coat of adhesive on the inside part of the channel and also on the fabric to where it's going to roll up and into. So we're going to let this set up the prescribed amount of time, come back and start doing the upholstery and rolling the corners in and rolling the fabric into the channel. My glue is set up and we're ready to proceed. The next step is going to be rolling this fabric into the channel. The difficulty is with these corners. We can't do this compound stretching, bending, sticking. So we are going to have to cut the material. This is scary part 3, I believe. I want to leave enough to wrap it inside. I'm going to pie cut this corner, this radius, and then probably cut this off straight, right about at that weld bead, and cut it off, and then I'll be able to fold this in along the length of it, do something similar on the other end. Thing you want to remember though, if you're making these pie cuts or trimming this off, on the pie cuts, don't go all the way up to the edge of the metal or the edge of what you want to wrap. Stay away a good 1/8 of an inch. The fabric will stretch that much around that radius and the little pie shapes will stick it inside. If you cut it right up to the metal, you're going to try to stretch it and the metal's going to show through and you won't like the results. So we're going to start doing a little trimming and then we will start sticking the upholstery into the channel. I've got a fresh razor blade and we're going to start about here. Yeah, scary stuff. Number 3, because there's no going back after this. Okay, and then leave myself enough to wrap. I'll be able to pull this inside the channel and do this corner and have it look good. Now we'll start up high here around the inside of that curve and start working our pie cuts up and in and start the first little bit of the channel. See how those are just sticking into place, just nice. Got a little nylon wedge here that I'm going to use to rub those inside corners in tight. You see how the fabric rolled over the metal edge and it's concealed? And then we'll start with this. I'm gonna go do the other corner. Again, we'll start up here on the straight and start to work that up, stretching it and sticking it with my thumb. Work it into place with the nylon, jamming it into that corner as tight as we can. And start on the main run. I can pull up with one hand and coax the material in with the other, keeping a nice tight roll on the bottom of the channel. I'm just letting the fabric slip through my finger enough. I'm keeping tension, but I'm letting it slip through as I press it down with the nylon. Again, pulling a little tension, but not so much that I can't coax the material where I need it. Using the knuckles of my stretching hand against the header bow to keep it from lifting while I am pulling the fabric, so I can get a good bond. And there I hit the end of the header bow. Work on the other side. This tool really works or helps around that little mushroom-headed stud for the windshield channel. You're able to get underneath it. And now I'm able to work that right into that corner. Then I've got adhesive. I'm going to pull this tight, fold the top material together at that gap between the header bows. There's enough adhesive there to stick the two pieces together. These are 3/4 inch square by about a little over an inch long little wood blocks. And I came up with these. What I am going to do is press them into this channel. And with the thickness of the fabric, they fit in very tightly. But being wood, it's not going to damage the fabric. Place I really want these blocks is in this corner. And on the edge of this channel, put a scrap of wood here. So I don't I think that is enough for today.